Hello everyone. Today I am going to speak to you about the verb and its tenses. This is a topic which I am sure you have studied at the school and college level. So what I am going to say to you is probably going to be in the nature of revision. The verb is one of the parts of speech which we use in almost every time we use language. But remember that there can never be a sentence without a verb. When we studied about types of sentences, we said that we could have a sentence with just one word and that word had to be a verb. For instance, a sentence like come, go. Why am I calling it a sentence? Because there is the implied subject you, and if I say you come or if I say come, it implies that you come, you have to come. Therefore, we cannot have a sentence without a verb, though we can have a sentence without the subject being specifically mentioned. The verb is one of the most important parts of speech in grammar, and we all use it in our language. I shall be speaking to you about the tenses of the verb, particularly the present simple tense, the simple present tense, the simple past tense, the present progressive tense, the past progressive tense, the present perfect tense, and the past perfect tense. Throughout, I shall try to relate these tenses or the uses of these tenses to functions which we need to perform and perform in our language. Therefore, not only will I give you examples, I will show you where we generally go wrong. Look at slide. It gives you some sentences. Divya is an actor. Dr. Balagopal is a teacher. We are students of second year. They are happy. You are invited to attend the party. The sun is a mass of fire. The travellers were tired. The river water is cold. Raman was a scientist. As I said earlier, all these sentences use the be verb in different forms. You know that when a person speaks about himself or herself, he says I am, and when we speak about somebody else, we say she is or he is. Let us study how the different forms function in singular and plural forms. This slide shows you forms of the be verb in present tense and in past tense, in the singular and in the plural. For the first person singular, you notice that we use am. For the first person plural, we use are in the present tense. In the past tense, we use was for the singular and were for the plural. In the second person form, we use are for the singular and are for the plural again. In the past tense, we use were and were in both singular as well as plural. In the third person, we use is and are, and in the past tense, we use was and were. Perhaps this will be easier for you if you look at some sentences. You also know that the forms of use would differ from formal to informal use. That is, if we are writing, we probably use the full form of these words. But when we are speaking, we say, for instance, I am a teacher. I would not say I am a teacher. These forms are shortened. Now look at slide. The full form I am changes to I'm in the shortened form. This is particularly of importance to students who are learning English in India, because many of us speak the way we write, and that is not always true and not always correct, because while we speak, we need to shorten the forms. For instance, we are changes to we're. I have given you a list of many other forms, full forms. Try and shorten them and write them down. Look at slide once again. I am changes to I'm. We are changes to we're. You are. He is. She is. They are. It is. They are. That is. This is. There are. Those are. There is. There are. Try and write the shortened forms of all these expressions. We need to remind ourselves once again that the verb describes action. It describes what we are doing. One of the first things that we all learn when we study tenses is the use of the simple present tense. It seems to be very easy because it means using verbs like is and are. Let us study some examples again. In the use of the simple present tense, you will notice there is a picture of a film star who is being interviewed. Let us read what she said to the interviewer. The interviewer asked her, "Do you watch television?" The film star said, "Whenever I am not shooting, I watch television. I watch all channels. I love Cartoon Network, Discovery and National Geographic." Interviewer: "What is your favorite show and why?" Kamalini Mukherjee: "People from different parts of the country show their talent and I love to hear them sing. There is so much talent and the participants are very good. That is why I like Indian Idol." Which shows don't you like? I don't like science fiction programs. You must have noticed that the actor Kamalini Mukherjee used the present form, the simple present form, to talk about her likes and dislikes. This is one of the most common uses of the present tense. We use the present tense form of the verb to speak or write about things that we do regularly, or to describe our likes and dislikes as was done by the actor. So the simple present tense is for things that happen all the time. We may use this form to describe our day's activities and, for instance, write a diary about them. We may say, "I get up at 6 a.m. every day. I brush my teeth and then I have a cup of coffee." You must have noticed that the use of the simple present is common in describing habitual actions. Look at the next slide, which describes uses of the present tense. The uses of the simple present are to talk of things in general. For instance, we could say, "The sun is shining brightly," or "The sea is stormy." We use the present tense, the simple present tense, to talk of habitual actions. I gave you an example of this a short while ago. For instance, I could say, "I go to work at 10 a.m. We also use this form to ask general questions. For example, "Where do you come from?" which means, which place do you belong to? We also use this form to make suggestions. For example, "Why don't you go home?" Notice the use of the simple present in this sentence. We also speak about universal truths using the simple present tense. For example, "Man is a social animal," or "The Mars is the hottest planet." You may also have noticed the use of the simple present tense in commentaries, particularly when you have watched or listened to radio commentaries. For example, Sachin hits another 4, or Saurav hits another 4, as I have given in the sentence there. The headlines in newspapers are also written in the simple present tense. For example, the Prime Minister visits Nicobar, or the Chief Minister holds discussions with the visiting dignitary. These are the common uses of the simple present tense. We could also express the very near definite future action by using the simple present tense. For example, the new exhibition opens tomorrow, or the shop opens tomorrow. To express schedule actions also, we use the simple present tense. For example, the Volvo bus leaves at 9:35, or the flight to Delhi takes off at 8:45. I have merely repeated what you probably learnt in school and college, as I said before. Very often we misuse this form. We make mistakes or make errors in the use of the present tense or the simple present tense. I shall refer to this when we speak of present continuous, because I shall relate it then to the use of the simple present. Let us move on now to the simple past tense. The simple past tense is most often used for narratives. You must have come across this use when you read stories or heard stories, especially those which do not relate to current time. For instance, when the author says, "Once upon a time there was a king," you notice that the simple past tense has been used. Let's read a short story and then look at the examples of past tense use in the story. Once upon a time, there was a man called Mohan who was very fond of entertaining guests. His guests were equally fond of eating. One day, he invited many friends to his house for lunch. There were about 10 people. A lot of different dishes were served and the guests enjoyed the food. The next day, Mohan told his wife he had called 20 people over for dinner. Mohan's wife was a good cook, but she was tired of cooking for so many people every day. She told Mohan, but he refused to listen to her. So, when the first dish was served, the guests just said, "No, thank you." The same happened with all the dishes. Mohan did not understand what happened to his friends. Very soon, when he invited people, they just gave an excuse and refused his invitations. Did you guess what happened? Mohan's wife thought of a plan. She added extra salt in the food so that guests stopped accepting his invitations. The simple past tense form of the verb denotes actions which have taken place in the past and are not related to the present. For instance, in a sentence like, "Jaya took a book and got into the train," or "Swami ran away from home." As in the earlier story, the same form is used to express actions or to denote actions which are over in the past. We use the simple past tense when question words are placed before the subject. For example, "Did you know that today is Sheila's birthday?" We also use this form to express a negative idea with a helping word. Vijay didn't know how to use a computer. Many of us make a mistake when using this form. Note that when a helping word is used, the helping word in this case is did. Since it is already in the past form, did denotes past time, the verb does not get changed into the past form. This is where many of us make a mistake. For instance, many students, many learners use the sentence, I did not went to college yesterday. Have you noticed the error there? Since did already denotes past time, there is no need to use went instead of go. So the correct form of the sentence would be, I did not go to college yesterday. This is applicable to the use of did in all the sentences that we make. Shall we move ahead now to the present perfect form? Look at slide. It shows you the use of the present perfect tense. This form is written as or denoted as have plus verb, and it is used to talk about actions completed in the near past. For example, Radha has just entered her name in the register. It is also used for actions which have a connection with the present. For instance, the train has left. We are talking about an action which was completed in the recent past, and that has a relationship to the time that I am talking now. Actions which are done for the first or the second time, where we use the expressions first or second, also you make use of the present perfect form. For example, this is the first time that they have visited our campus, or this is the second time I am talking to you. Actions which have not been done for some time also make a use of the present perfect tense. As in the example, I haven't gone to Warangal for over a year. We also use the present perfect tense to speak about actions which may still happen. For example, we haven't seen Divakar for a week now, but the implication is that it could happen any time, in the sense that we could meet Divakar any time, or we could see him any time now. The present perfect tense is also used to denote time with words like never, ever, just, already, etc. Here's an example. My parents have never been to Mumbai. Or, have you ever been to Agra? You must have noticed that we have used a helping word, or we have used have plus the verb in this form of the verb or this tense. Let us now look at the past perfect tense, which is again another form that we confuse or make mistakes with. In the use of the past perfect tense, had plus verb, we notice that there are two actions which have taken place. This tense is used to denote the two actions which have taken place both in the past. Most of the time we use expressions like when, after to speak about them. On slide you would notice the two sentences that I have given are like this. When I entered the cinema, the film had started. In this one sentence there are in fact two ideas. I entered the cinema, the film had started, and the reference is two actions which have taken place in the past. One happened before the other. That is, the film started and then I entered the cinema. In such cases where we want to express ideas of this kind, we use the past perfect tense. After I completed my work at the computer, I went to my friend's house. Here again we have two ideas. There are two sentences which have been put together by the use of after, and there are two ideas, two actions which have taken place. One is completion of my work at the computer, and the other is going to my friend's house. If I wanted to say it in terms of time, I would say, at 4:30 I completed my work at the computer. At 4:35 I went to my friend's house. that would denote that one action was completed before the other happened. We need to remember this and relate tense to meaning. It is then that we will not go wrong in our sentences. We shall move on next to the uses of the present continuous tense and the past continuous tense. Hello viewers, let us now talk about the present continuous, or what is called the present progressive tense. The most easy way of recognizing this form of the verb is to look for the ing endings. That's one way of recognizing it. And what we generally do is that we use this form to talk about actions which we are performing right now. For instance, I am standing at the board, I am writing on the board, I am talking to you, you are listening to me, and I hope you are enjoying the lesson. This is one of the forms, as I said, of the verb. But we must remember that when we use this form, verb plus ing, as in the examples I gave you just now, we have always used the helping verb or the auxiliary that I referred to at the beginning of this lesson. We use the be form at the beginning, and the be form is witnessed, or it is marked by words like is, am, are, were. So when I say I am standing at the board, I have used this helping word, which is also called the auxiliary. Remember, I cannot say I standing at the board. That would not be correct. I cannot say you listening. Though the meaning is clear, these sentences are said to be ungrammatical. We need to use the helping word is, am, are, were according to the person and the number. For instance, if I am saying she is watching the television program, because it is a singular and it is the second person, I have used is. If it is the past tense, we would use the auxiliary were. We were watching the television program. This is the use of the plural in the past tense for the third person. We must remember all these when we are speaking about the present progressive tense. So, remember, you have to use one of these auxiliary verbs and you have to use the ing form when you are writing in the present continuous tense. I explained that we speak about or we use the present progressive tense when we are describing actions that we are performing now. For instance, I am wearing a sari, I am talking to you, I am holding a piece of chalk. So I am speaking about actions that relate to the present and are happening now. So what I am saying then is that this action is begun and it is in progression. It is in progression. We are in somewhere here. We are talking about action which is happening now. Remember, we are talking about something which is happening now and we are using an auxiliary to support the form of the verb. We also use this form, the present continuous tense or the ing form of the verb, in questions, and this is where many of us make mistakes. Let me show you with the help of some examples. What happens when we want to frame a question? We use forms like this. Where are you going? Where are you going? Notice this is the auxiliary and going is the ing form of the verb. But many of us make a mistake because we shift this verb after the you. We say where you are going. In that construction, in the construction of the sentence in that way, it is not grammatically correct. Or, for example, if you say what you are doing, that is an ungrammatical sentence. We cannot frame a sentence in that way. We must say what are you doing. So the word order in sentences like this is very significant, is very important. We must remember to place the auxiliary, the helping verb, in the right position. We cannot frame a question form using the are after you in such a sentence. Remember that this is the only grammatical way in which you can write this idea. You cannot say where you are going or what you are doing, what your name is. Though the meaning is clear and your friends or the person you are talking to may understand you, it would not be correct to write the sentences in that way. Let us now look at the use of the ing form to refer to future time, that is, to actions which are going to happen. For instance, I may say, my son who stays in Bangalore is going to visit me in May. There is a reference to future time, but the use of the verb is in the ing form. My son is going to visit me in May. The implication is, the suggestion is, the action is going to happen in the future. The reference is to future time. It is not referring to the present time here. Though the use is of the ing form, the reference is to the future. We must remember that we need to read such sentences very carefully to see what is being intended, what is the meaning that is being conveyed by the sentence. In the going to form of the verbs, we always refer to future actions which are likely to happen, which we intend to make happen, or which are going to take place later. This is one of the forms in which the ing verb is used. There are a couple of cautions that I need to give to you about the use of the ing forms. Again, these are cases where we as Indian learners, we as second language learners of English, very often go wrong. They are, let me tell you clearly, they are in the use of verbs of perception. There are some verbs which we call verbs of perception. They are verbs like itself, know, understand, feel, think, love. In such verbs, we must remember such verbs do not take the ing forms. We cannot, for instance, say, I am liking Sudha. Like does not take the ing form. It remains I like. In the sentence that I just gave you, the correct or the grammatical form is to say I like Sudha, or I cannot say I am knowing her very well. The only way in which we can express that idea is by saying I know her very well. As I said earlier, we go wrong here. You cannot say I am understanding chemistry very well, because understand is believed to be a perception verb. It is a verb about perception, and for perception we cannot use the ing form as we have done in the case of other verbs. Similarly with feel, think, love. You will probably wonder why I have included love even though you have an advertisement which says I am loving it. You cannot use loving in the sense it is an ungrammatical sentence. You cannot use love because it is a verb of perception, and you cannot use it in that form. You have to say I love, she loves, he loves, they love. Loving as in a progressive sense cannot be a grammatical sentence. But a very popular company has used it to attract attention to its product, and the advertisement says I am loving it. Similarly in the case of possession, when you are talking about possessing something, for example in the case of verbs like have, if I want to say I have a red car, I cannot say I am having a car. I can only use have in its ing form if I am talking about I am having a meal or I am having a cold drink, to refer to what I am doing in the present continuous tense or in the present time that I spoke about a short while ago. We cannot talk about possession, about possessing something, about something belonging to us. I cannot say, for instance, I am having a house or I am having a beautiful dress. I cannot speak about it as belonging to me using the have plus ing form. That would be ungrammatical. I have to say I have a new car, I have a good house, I have a beautiful house, I have a pretty dress. I can speak about possession, especially using have, without the ing or the present progressive form of the tense. Having spoken to you about the present continuous tense, let me move on now to the past continuous tense. Past, as you can see and you probably remember and know, refers to action which has been completed. But in this case, we also have the use of the continuous, which suggests action which is taking place. Generally, we use this form, the past continuous tense, for denoting actions, two actions, one which is over and the other which is in progression, or one in progression and the other which is completed. Definitely the reference is to the past. Instead of using is as we have done in the case of the present progressive or the present continuous tense, we use was in the case of the past continuous tense. The auxiliary or the helping word we used in present continuous tense was is, if you can recollect, and in the case of the past continuous tense we use the auxiliary or the helping word was, and of course its different forms in relation to the gender, to the person and to the number. Let us see now how we use the past tense form and past continuous tense form and what we use it for. We use the past continuous tense for denoting actions which were in progression when something else happened. For instance, I could say Ram was crossing the road when he was hit by a speeding bus. You will notice that there are two actions. Action 1 is Ram was crossing the road. Ram was crossing the road. The second action was the speeding bus hit him. Both these are combined into the one sentence that I gave you just now when I said Ram was crossing the road when the speeding bus hit him. Though both the actions are taking place in the past, the reference is to the past and the actions are all both over, we are referring to one action which was in progression. One action which was in progression when the other action happened. When the other action took place, this action was in progression and both the actions took place in the past. We want to suggest the progression of one action and the occurrence of the other. In this case, both the actions, though they are both over, we are not suggesting that one action was over, as in the case of the past perfect tense. You may recollect when I spoke to you about the past perfect tense, I also spoke about two actions. Had this been in the past perfect tense, perhaps the action would not be, here we want to denote the idea that this action was taking place when the other action happened, as I said just now. In the past perfect tense, we say the train had already left. There is no attempt to denote action which is taking place. We say one action took place before the other. So there is no attempt to show progression here in the past perfect tense. This is the distinction which we can draw between the past perfect. We have action 1 and we have action 2 in the past perfect tense. What we said when we spoke about the past perfect is that one action was over before the other happened. Both actions have taken place in the past. In this case, in the case of the past continuous tense, we are referring to action in progression when the other action happens. Or if you could say, as in the case of the sentence again, let's come back to the example. This action was taking place when the second action happened. Here, don't get confused by the use of the ing form for the speeding bus. The ing form does not denote the present continuous tense. In this case, it is part of the noun phrase. It is part of the subject. And when you find the ing form in the subject position, normally it is not the verb, it is not really talking about action. Here the action is denoted by hit, and this action took place when the first action was in progression. For example, we could say Lalit was climbing the ladder when his foot slipped. Again, we are talking about two actions. We are talking about one action which was in progression when the second action happened. Remember that the use of when also is a clue, is a way in which we can find out that the past continuous tense has been used. One way is to look for the auxiliary and the ing form, the auxiliary in the past and the ing form. The second thing to look for, the second word or the clue that we need to look for, is the use of words like when. In this case, when this action was taking place, another action had happened in the past. That is how we denote the past continuous tense. Again, as I said, these forms are generally used for reporting action, for talking about something which has happened. Most of the past tense forms are used to talk about actions which are over and when we are reporting them to someone else. In this lesson, I have spoken to you about the verb and its tenses. I have not gone into great detail or described all the different forms of the verbs. That is so because you will need to go to a good grammar book and to refer to it, not just for the rules but also to practice how to do these exercises, the exercises on the different forms or the tenses that I have spoken to you about. I have spoken to you about the simple present tense, I have spoken to you about the simple past tense, I have spoken to you about the present continuous tense, the present perfect tense, the past continuous tense and the past perfect tense. You may wonder why I have not spoken to you about the future. In fact, we use words to indicate future time. We do not have a future tense. We use words to indicate, make references to future time, and we do that using words like will and shall. We make references or indications to talk about something which we are going to do in the future. You could go to a good grammar book to find out the rules further, because I have not attempted to describe all of them. You would also need to go to a good grammar book to practice a lot of exercises so that you learn how to internalize. What I said right at the beginning is that you need to internalize these rules. You need to interiorize them to make them a part of your daily use of the language. That can happen if you read a lot, if you write a lot, I had said. Some of the books that I think you could look at would be a good grammar book that you could look at is a book called Modern English, Grammar and Composition by Professor Krishnaswamy, N. Krishnaswamy. Another good book is a book by Thompson and Martinet. It has plenty of exercises that you could practice, and it has the solutions or the answers for the exercises which you could check on your own. I suggest that you do that, because merely listening to someone talking about grammar or giving you the rules of grammar does not suffice. You will have to internalize the rules by practicing, by writing, by reading. I suggest you take the help of your mentors and do these exercises and check the answers given at the back in order to find out where you have gone wrong. This will help you over a period of time to correct yourself and to learn better English. I have tried to point out a few ways in which you may improve your usage. Good luck and all the best.